When I think of my childhood, I remember the scent of motor oil mixed with the familiar hum of tools clanging against metal. The smell wrapped around me like a warm blanket every time I stepped into the small garage my father owned in Riverside Springs. My father, a towering figure in my young eyes, was always there, a steady anchor against the turbulent waters of life that rose around me. His hands, etched with grease and scars, told stories of resilience as he worked tirelessly as a mechanic in our quaint town. I admired his unwavering presence, a man who never sought glory but was a hero nonetheless. Amidst the chaos of daily life, he taught me the virtues of courage and hope, reminding me that genuine heroism is often cloaked in humility and hard work. As I watched him each day, I felt safe in his embrace, cherished the lessons he imparted, lessons that shaped my understanding of right and wrong. I still remember the way his rough hands would knead dough for our Friday night pizza, the same hands that expertly repaired engines during the day. Every part has a purpose, Clara, he would say, kneading the dough with a purpose of his own. Just like people, you need to understand what makes them tick. I always took that to heart, but I never could have anticipated the storm that loomed ahead, one that would shake our world and thrust me into a battle I never wanted. It began with hushed conversations among townsfolk, whispers laced with envy that seemed intent on tarnishing my father's reputation. The culprit was Jack, the owner of the rival auto shop right across the street. Jack was the embodiment of cunning, fueled not by hard work but by a desperate need to dominate. With his slick back hair and arrogant demeanor, he reveled in scheming against those who stood in his way. I still remember the day I first noticed the way Jack smirked as he leaned against his office window, watching my father work. "Look at him," Jack had sneered to a customer. "Such a hardworking fool. You know he doesn't even use proper parts right." The customer, someone I had played with during summer breaks, had looked at me, eyes filled with doubt, and walked away, leaving behind only a whispered, "Sorry, Clara." What did he mean by that? I had asked my father that evening, my voice shaking. I was 9 years old and arming myself with a sense of injustice that made my small heart race. My father, his back turned as he washed his hands, replied gently, "Don't let it bother you, sweetheart. There are always going to be people like Jack. The world is full of gossip and envy, especially when someone works hard and doesn't seek anything in return for it." But with every passing day, those silent conversations became audible, stitching together a narrative that tarnished my father's honor. Over time, more customers began to fade away. Neighbors who had once trusted him to work on their cars began avoiding us like we carried an invisible plague. I watched familiar faces from school turn their backs, and my heart ached with every loss. It was like losing a piece of my childhood every time. I could see pain etched in my father's dark eyes. He was losing the very essence of his life's work. In those days, the house felt heavy with an unbearable silence, the jovial laughter we once shared now replaced by resignation. My father, the once vibrant and proud man, became a shadow of himself, his hands trembling as he worked under the hood of a car, the same hands that used to lift me effortlessly into the air. "Dad," I whispered one evening as I joined him at the workbench, the fluorescent lights flickering above. "Are you okay?" His gaze shifted to mine, something flickered in his expression, almost as if he couldn't bear to show me how much he was hurting. "I'm fine, Clara, just a little tired." He offered me a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes, which were weary and distant. "Maybe we should confront Jack," I suggested, my small fists clenching on the bench top. "He's spreading lies. It's not fair." "I know it's not, but stirring trouble won't help us," he replied, his voice steady, but I could hear the tremor beneath. "There is a time and place for everything. Some battles are more worthwhile than others." But I wasn't ready to accept defeat. It broke my heart to see him suffer as Jack's underhanded tactics slowly stripped him of everything he had built. "He can't get away with this," I thought to myself, feeling an ember of revenge ignite within me, hotter and more consuming than I had ever imagined. "I have to do something." Thus began my quiet rebellion. I felt a determination swell inside me, a fierce resolution to protect my family's name, to restore the dignity Jack sought to crush. The world outside transformed into a collection of clues and snippets of conversations. I spent countless hours plotting, diving into research about Jack's business practices. I combed through old newspapers in the library, retracing every article about Jack and his shop, looking for anything that could help my father reclaim his good name. "Here we go," I muttered to myself one day, my fingers stained with ink as I detailed Jack's campaign to slander my father. I discovered the horrifying truth that he was operating outside the law, manipulating records, and skimming profits from unsuspecting customers. A wave of disbelief washed over me. "This is worse than I thought," I whispered, fighting back tears of frustration. Every story I learned added another layer to the fire that fueled my resolve. I hastily grabbed a large poster board and began documenting every little detail, assembling evidence like pieces of a puzzle that would reveal Jack's deceitful empire. I began connecting with our loyal customers, those few souls still willing to stand by my father. I would see old Mr. Harper, who always brought his classic Chevy in for repairs, sitting on a bench outside the shop, lost in thought. "Mr. Harper, what do you think about Jack?" I asked one day, leaning in with curiosity. He sighed, the weariness visible in his wrinkles. That man, he's not what he seems, Clara. I've seen things, counting numbers that don't make sense. I thought old man Van Hart was the honest man here. Really, can you tell me more? I pressed, scribbling his words down feverishly, feeling galvanized by a shared sense of injustice. I felt their desperation mirror my own, a shared resolve pushing me forward. I've heard stories, whispers in the night, he continued, looking around as if afraid to be overheard. I've seen Jack's men come in and out during hours they shouldn't be operating. With each conversation, I collected evidence, piecing together a narrative that would expose Jack's crooked ways. Discussions held in hushed tones started sounding like symphonies composed of just one note, injustice. I could feel the weight of their stories, heavy and compelling, wrapping around me like a shield, pushing me to forge ahead. Eventually, I began to piece together what I needed. I pictured the moment when I would present the truth, carefully compiled like a stack of cards waiting to tumble, scattering Jack's lies into oblivion. With enough evidence and people willing to testify against him, I knew I had the ammunition I needed. It would only take the slightest breath of wind to knock Jack from his twisted throne. One early autumn afternoon, while the leaves started to change, painting the town in vibrant hues of orange and gold, I walked into the shop purposely. Dad, we need to talk, I said, my heart racing with the weight of hidden knowledge. He paused, setting down his wrench and looked at me, lines of worry creasing his forehead. What is it, Clara? There was both concern and curiosity in his voice. I took a deep breath, calming the storm brewing within me. I think I have a way to help, I stated, my voice steady. We have to do something about Jack. My father frowned but did not dismiss me outright. What do you mean, I have evidence? Jack is lying and cheating customers, I revealed, eager to share not just my research but the fire inside me. I spoke to customers and they want to help, they want the truth out there. His eyes widened, a mix of shock and hope shimmering in their depths. Clara. He began slowly and I could see the uncertainty on his face. These aren't easy battles. Are you sure you want to get involved? I am, I replied passionately. I can't sit by and watch him ruin everything you've built. You taught me to fight for what is right. Isn't that what we have to do now? Just like you always said. He looked down, the fight draining from him. It pained me to see. You have no idea what you're asking for. It could backfire and we could lose everything. I stepped closer, feeling the resolve solidify in my bones. But what if we do? What if we stand by and let this man have his way? It will eat away at us until there's nothing left. I watched as a flicker of defiance sparked in his eyes, an ember ignited by hope. This battle was mine to fight as much as his. I wouldn't let Jack's shadow consume our lives any longer. With enough courage, I believed we could turn the wheels of fortune back in our favor. I knew I would have to be patient, but the moment to strike loomed near. I trust you, Clara, he finally said softly, and a flood of relief washed over me. But we will have to plan carefully. I am ready, I affirmed, heart racing as I felt the tides of determination begin to shift. Together, we would create a wildfire that would turn Jack's deceit against him. I could feel it in my bones. This was just the beginning. The months passed with an overwhelming intensity. My heart raced as I plotted my revenge, envisioning the moment when the truth would catch up to Jack. Each day felt like a slow climb up a steep mountain, the summit of my goals barely within reach, but somehow tugging at my mind like a persistent whisper. I could feel the threads of my plan tightening around Jack's deceitful empire, ready to unravel it all in one swift motion. It has to be perfect, I would tell myself, pacing back and forth in the dim light of the shop, a place that had once been a sanctuary filled with warmth and laughter, now a battlefield stained with the memories of my father's frustrations and heartaches. I resolved to expose everything Jack had done, the way he had methodically dismantled my father's business to feed his own greedy ambitions. The deeper I dug, the more horrified I became. After losing so much, not just the business, but the very essence of who my father had been, a plan began to form in my mind. I had to act. I took a deep breath and called the local news station renowned for uncovering stories of corruption. My palms were sweaty and I could barely find my voice as I dialed the number. This is it, I kept whispering to myself, my heart pounding like a drum. The ringing felt like heartbeat pulses, each one louder than the last. When a voice answered, my words tumbled out in a frenzied rush, fueled by anger and desperation. I have information about illegal activities in Riverside Springs. I need to speak to someone who can help, I said, the determination slicing through my nerves like a knife. I described the corrupt machinations at play, everything Jack had done to drive my father into despair, how he had stolen livelihoods to bolster his own. As I spoke, I could almost taste victory on the tip of my tongue. This is going to change everything, I thought. The confrontation I had been scheming for was beginning to take shape. The day of the interview felt electric. I awoke to the sound of rustling leaves outside, the soft caress of morning light washing over my face, illuminating the mounting tension I felt. I dressed quickly, every piece of my outfit a small armor against the anxiety swirling within me. I arrived at the shop to find our usual crowd had gathered, whispering and glancing curiously at the cameras and microphones being set up outside. The news crew took their time, their laughter and banter feeling almost surreal against the backdrop of my father, who sat at the counter, oblivious to the brewing storm. I glanced at him, his focus on the old ledger sprawled out before him. It pained me to see the lines of worry etched deeply on his forehead. If he only knew, I thought, my heart aching not just for him, but for all the dreams he had given up. Are you ready? The reporter asked, her brown eyes twinkling with anticipation, bright against her professional demeanor. Yeah, I think so. I have to be, I managed to say, feeling my heart race as the adrenaline surged through my veins. As the crew prepared to film, I felt the tension crackling in the air, a mix of excitement and fear wrapping around me. I can do this, I assured myself. For Dad, just tell the truth, the reporter encouraged, her voice steady as if sensing my apprehension. They announced live coverage, and just like that, I was on television, the world watching, my heart echoing in my ears. The camera zoomed in, and I could feel the weight of its gaze pressing down on me. The moment was surreal, an ethereal blend of reality and dreams. When the reporter glanced toward me, I took a deep breath, feeling time stretch into infinity. As the questions came, I laid bare the truth bit by bit, revealing Jack's deceit in vivid detail. I spoke about the shoddy deals made behind closed doors, the manipulation of contracts, the way my father had fought so hard to keep the shop alive only to be systematically sabotaged. He doesn't care about this town, I asserted, my voice quaking with anger. He only cares about himself. Retracing the impact Jack's betrayal had on my family felt cathartic, like a dam finally letting loose after years of pressure. I felt as if all my fears and frustrations were pouring out, crashing against the shores of retribution, flooding my heart with a sense of power I never knew I held. I caught sight of my father peeking around the corner, his brow furrowed with confusion, listening to my words brought forth from the depths of my perseverance. He will understand, I thought. If only for a moment he will see how hard I fought for everything he sacrificed. The story aired that evening, and as the flickering images lit up our modest living room, I held my breath, imagining what it would mean for us and the fate of Jack's corrupt empire. The news rolled out, painting a vivid picture of Jack as a scheming villain, and I reveled in every moment of the unfolding narrative. My heart swelled with pride and defiance. Each word from the newscaster felt like a victory cry resonating within me. I could see my father's eyes widening, clinging onto every detail, and the realization that the world was finally hearing our story. The very air in our home seemed to buzz with anticipation, a surge of unshakable energy sparking through the room. As the town became captivated, their needles of attention shifting from my father to Jack's treachery, I could almost hear the whispers swirling outside. Did you hear about that scoundrel? How could he do that? I could imagine their incredulous tones lacing the night with a newfound determination to confront injustice. Dad, I said, turning to him, desperately wanting to share this breakthrough. What is all this? He asked, his voice thick with confusion. They know everything now, Dad, everything Jack did, I breathed, an overwhelming sense of relief washing over me like cool rain after a long drought. But the warmth in his eyes didn't return immediately. Instead, they flickered with a mixture of disbelief and lingering worry. Clara, are you sure this is the way? He asked softly, almost hesitatingly. Yes, it is. This is our chance. People will see Jack for what he really is, I exclaimed, the fire of my passion spilling over into my words. Yet still doubt creased his brow. And what if it backfires? What if he comes for us? You know how he operates. He doesn't just let things go. I hesitated, struck by the fear I had pushed to the back of my mind. This was the part I hadn't prepared for, the sense that while I had fought for justice, I had also awakened a monster. We will deal with that when it comes, I said louder than I intended, trying to brush aside my own emerging doubts. Grimly, he nodded, softening slightly as he continued, watching the news report unfurl. If this is truly how you feel, then I will support you, Clara, he said at last, a shaky resolve threading his voice, and I could feel the crumbling weight of years' worth of burdens lifting, if just a little. The wheels of justice were finally in motion, and with them, the unyielding strength of my father's legacy began to rekindle like a phoenix rising from the ashes. Hope flowed back into our lives, igniting a flame that had long been suffocated by despair. Customers began trickling back into our shop as people recognized my father's unwavering spirit once more. I stood behind the counter, waiting for the familiar faces to reappear, hearts and hands coming together again like pieces of a puzzle that had been scattered for far too long. I could hardly believe how much had changed, how much weight had shifted in the last few days. As more customers entered, I reveled in the warmth of their returning smiles, laughter punctuating the air, echoing through the shop like a cherished melody. Each satisfied customer left with a promise to return, each interaction restoring a piece of what had been lost. My father's smile, once dimmed by despair, blossomed anew, and witnessing the rebirth of his hope struck a chord deep within my heart, resonating in ways I had never expected. Watching him serve the customers with renewed zeal, I felt a rush of gratitude. Traditionally hearty but now gentle, my father engaged them, recounting stories and sharing smiles that spread across their faces like sunlight. It was a tiny revolution, reflections of resilience rippling through the community. This is what it's meant to be, strength among us, I murmured under my breath, feeling the words solidify under the fraying edges of my own confidence. Yet doubts lingered as shadows behind me. I knew I had to anticipate Jack's reaction. I should have braced myself for the storm brewing in the distance. The realization settled like a weight in my gut. I had been so focused on the victory that I had failed to foresee how Jack would strike back. The darker side of my plans chilled my bones, how the monster I had unleashed would not go down without a fight. My heart raced at the thought, and though I wanted to believe the point of no return had dropped Jack to his knees, a nagging fear urged me to prepare for what he might unleash in retaliation. "Oh, Clara," I muttered to myself, the excitement now tainted with anxiety, "what have you started?" And just like that, I hesitated, anchored in place, caught between pride and fear. Not knowing the full extent of the tempest poised to break, I felt the weight of my father's presence beside me as we approached Jack's auto shop, my heart pounding like a drum in a parade. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows as we walked on the cracked pavement. Each step felt like a battle charge, the air thick with tension and the scent of oil and metal wafting from the open garage doors. I glanced up at my father, determination etched into his weathered face, his unwavering spirit flickering in the depths of his blue eyes. It struck me how he always seemed larger than life, a steadfast anchor in the storm that Jack had brewed. Just a couple of weeks ago, our roles had felt reversed. I had been the scared daughter hiding behind his protective shield, but now I felt a surge of power coursing through me. This was our moment, a precipice above the roaring river of fear that Jack had cast us into. As my hand curled around the cool metal knob of the door, I hesitated for a fleeting second. What if this was a terrible mistake? What if we were only walking into a trap? My mind flashed with memories of those chilling letters, the threats that had haunted our nights. But then I thought of my father, the sacrifices he had made, the nights he had worked late just to keep our shop, our family, afloat. "Can't back down now," I whispered under my breath. With a determined inhalation, I twisted the knob and stepped inside. The smell of grease and gasoline enveloped me like a blanket. It was a familiar aroma that used to make me feel at home, but now, under these circumstances, it felt more like a heavy fog. Jack looked up from his bench, his greasy hands paused mid-motion, surprise flickering across his face. A moment of shock melted away, giving way to the arrogant smirk I had come to dread. Well, if it isn't the dynamic duo. Come to beg for mercy, have you?" His voice was smooth, coated in sarcasm, like honey laced with venom. I clenched my fists at my sides, feeling the tremor of anticipation and anger build within me. His words were merely more of Jack's poison meant to scare us, but I refused to be scared. This time I stood my ground, locked shoulder to shoulder with my father as we faced him. "No, Jack, we have come to confront you," I stated, trying to keep my voice steady even though I felt uncertainty gnawing at my resolve. He chuckled, a low, throaty sound that echoed through the garage. "Confront me, precious. I was wondering when you two would finally realize the futility of your little games. You have no idea who you are dealing with." Jack's gaze pierced through me. It reminded me of a hawk sizing up his next meal. "You think you can intimidate us with your letters and phone calls." My voice carried a tinge of defiance, igniting in that moment like a match against darkness. "We are done living in fear of your threats. The town knows what you have done. They will not stand idle while you play your games." "Games?" Jack leaned back against his workbench, crossing his arms, his smirk only widening. "You really think they care about a couple of buzzards trying to ruin my reputation? You do know the town loves me, right? I am the one who fixes their cars, saves their lives when they are stranded. They would never believe you over me." His laughter reverberated through the room, a sound that threatened to crush my spirit. "We have the evidence," my father interjected, stepping forward, placing a steadying hand on my back. "And we will expose you, Jack. You have carved out a comfortable little kingdom here under a false pretense, but we will not stand by while you bully us into submission. Those days are over." His words were calm, but I felt the pulse of fury behind them, like the beating of a war drum. Jack's face twisted into a mask of contempt. "Evidence? You underestimate me. Everything you think you've got is just more fodder for me to laugh at. You really think you can knock me off my throne? You are just a couple of ungrateful losers trying to bite the hand that feeds you." "Enough," I shouted, surprised by the force that came from deep within me. "You can belittle us all you want, but you are the one who is scared. You know your time is running out." The conviction echoed in my voice, and for a moment I could see the glimmer of uncertainty in his eyes. "You think threats and bluster frighten me? I thrive on panic." Jack's voice rose as he stepped closer, looming over us like a thundercloud. It reeked of desperation, though I could sense his attempt to maintain an illusion of control. The muscles in his jaw tightened, and for a brief moment I wondered if he was beginning to realize he was no longer comfortably seated in his power. "Maybe you thrive on panic, Jack," I replied, meeting his glare head-on, "but you will not leave this without consequences. Your reign of terror ends today." The heat of my words blazed between us, tangible and electric. My heart raced, not with fear as it had so many times before, but with a fierce determination to stand my ground and fight back. Jack's eyes narrowed and the corners of his mouth pulled into a snarl. "You think you can rally an army against me? Bring it on. I am ready for any war you want to start." The menace in his voice was palpable, but so was his vulnerability. Was it possible that I had struck a nerve? A creeping wave of confidence began to wash over me. I do not need an army, Jack. I have the truth on my side. I called out, confidence surging through me, my voice ringing out like a bell in the silence of the garage. Townspeople may fear you, but they are starting to wake up. You might have them fooled for now, but the minutes are ticking down for you, so go ahead, keep underestimating us. You will see just how serious we are. He laughed again, that same chilling sound, but it was tinged with a nervous edge. And what is this evidence of yours? What are you holding against me? Make your move. Convince me you are not wasting my time. He leaned in, a hint of challenge beneath his bravado, as if he were daring us to proceed. We will gather everything we need, Jack. Witnesses, proof of your shady dealings. Consider this a warning. You may find comfort in your little empire, but empires built on fear crumble. You are just a lion pretending to be king. Your facade is cracking. My words hung heavy in the air, irresistible in their weight. I could feel the pressure building. The last fragile thread between us pulled taut. Jack moved back slightly, an imperceptible shift, but enough to tell me we had rattled him. You think the townsfolk will turn on me? I have fed them, clothed them. You underestimate loyalty, girl. Enjoy your little dreams of revenge. He sneered, but the bravado seemed to wane, giving way to a flicker of doubt. You will regret this, I assure you. I could see it then, the shroud of fury and arrogance cloaking his true concern. Jack was starting to realize that we weren't merely here to threaten him, we were ready to act. I half expected him to cower, but instead he gathered himself, a flicker of defiance illuminating his eyes. We will see who truly has power here, he spat back, anger radiating around us like a storm ready to unleash its fury. You will regret stirring the pot. This isn't just a game, Clara, this is war. My heart raced as I took a step back from the intensity of his gaze. I am ready for your war, Jack. You may think you own this town, but I promise you it is us who own the truth. My voice cracked slightly, but the sentiment rang clear. Jack sneered, but there was a tremor in his bravado. I could sense it. You'll need more than just a few words to take me down, but all right, bring it on. I thrive on conflict. Let's see how that works out for you. His laughter echoed in the shop, but I could feel the atmosphere shifting. He was angry, yes, but now there was an undercurrent of desperation to his mockery that hadn't existed before. With our confidence hanging in the air, we turned to leave, but before I reached the door, I couldn't resist looking back at him. You may have the illusion of power, Jack, but we will not give up. We will fight back, count on it. Each word felt like a hammer striking iron, and as we stepped back into the fading light outside, I could feel the weight of change beginning to settle around us. As the sun dipped below the horizon, leaving a golden glow skirting the edges of the incoming night, I drew in a breath of fresh air to dispel the lingering tension from the shop. The battle lines had been drawn. We had moved from shadows of fear to a decisive moment of confrontation and determination. I looked up at my father, and in that shared glance, I saw the spark of hope igniting our souls to rise as warriors. Are you ready for this? My father asked, his voice a steady anchor amidst the chaos swirling in my chest. Trust and tenacity filled his words, and for a moment it was as if we stood before a brave new world. Yes, I replied, the strength behind my voice opening up new possibilities. This ends now. Together we will expose him. That night we returned home with our hearts steeped in purpose. The shadow that Jack had cast over our lives was beginning to lift, and in its wake rose the promise of vengeance, courage, and ultimately the reclamation of our lives. The road ahead would be long and treacherous, but for the first time I felt empowered. Jack was not invincible. Jack was merely a man holding onto a fading crown, and our resolve to take it back was burning brighter than any fear he could conjure. The moment Jack stepped into the room, the atmosphere shifted like a tightening noose. I could feel the tension rippling between us, a live wire sparking with the electricity of our confrontation. His usually smug smirk vanished, replaced by a menacing glare that sent a chill racing down my spine. He leaned into my space, his eyes burning with an anger so palpable it felt like heat radiating from a flame. You think you can just waltz in here and threaten me? He spat, his voice low and dangerous, as if he were calling forth a storm. Each word dripped with contempt, and I felt my heart pounding, not in fear, but in defiance against the weight of his intimidation. Yet as I stood there, my gaze flickered over to my father. His old, worn face was illuminated with a fire I had not seen in years, a flame kindled by moments long before my time, one that spoke of battles fought with resilience and honor. And at that moment, I understood that we were not standing alone. Together, we were a force to be reckoned with. We do not fear you, Jack, not anymore. My father's voice rang out firm and unwavering. It was a declaration, a rallying cry that reverberated through the tension-clad air around us. His words felt like a shield against Jack's malignant energy, granting us courage we had only dared to dream of possessing before. I felt the thrill of our unity course through me, igniting embers of strength in my chest. I stood with my father, shoulder to shoulder, each of us bolstered by the strength of the other. Jack lunged forward, fury contorting his features like a storm ready to unleash its wrath, but I did not flinch. Fear, that old companion of mine, had finally been vanquished. Before we could react, he shoved us backward, the abrupt violence of his actions startling yet somehow expected. He shouted ugly words, each one a raindrop in the tempest of our confrontation, before slamming the door shut behind him, leaving us in the silence of our shared breath. But in that moment, I felt something shift within me. A profound epiphany washed over my thoughts. The quest for revenge I had harbored so tightly in my heart melted away. It was never just about Jack or even about my own suffering. It was about my father's story, our legacy, and the good that echoes throughout the humble tales of so many in Riverside Springs. My heart swelled with determination, a fire illuminating my resolve. In the days that followed, the town rallied around us, each person a thread weaving into the vibrant tapestry of resilience. Friends, family, loyal customers, they stepped forth to share their stories, stories woven with threads of Jack's wrongdoings and selfish actions. The air thrummed with an energy that lifted spirits and ignited hope, replacing the despair that Jack had cast over us. I remember standing in our shop, the familiar scent of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the warmth of pastries in the air, when the local news station returned. The atmosphere around us shifted once more. This time it was electric with potential. Cameras clicked into life, lights flickered on, and microphones jostled in the scuffle to capture our voices. As the reporters drew closer, I felt an exhilarating rush. They focused not on Jack but on us, the underdogs finally rising to the challenge that had long oppressed us. With each story shared, a symphony of voices rose, erupting into a powerful chorus of unity against oppression, echoing through Riverside Springs and beyond. The truth cannot be silenced, I proclaimed as I stood against a backdrop of supportive faces, my father's hand resting reassuringly on my shoulder. There are strength and honor in community and love. Jack may try to intimidate us, but together we are far stronger than he could ever imagine. My words hung in the air, vibrating with the collective strength birthed from each act of bravery revealed. People nodded in agreement, murmurings of support rippling like a wave through the crowd. There was something almost sacred about that moment. It was not just a shift in power, it was the reclamation of our identities. As the days turned into weeks, Jack's empire began to crumble under the weight of its own making. Customers who had once avoided our shop like a ghostly apparition were returning, balancing their loyalty to us with the undeniable truth they now dared to acknowledge. They came in droves, like bees buzzing back to a blooming flower, bringing with them warmth and camaraderie, filling the atmosphere with joy. One afternoon, as I stood behind the counter, I could not help but smile as the bell over the door jingled continuously in rhythm with happy chatter. I watched my father's spirit lift with each passing moment, the joy illuminating his face brighter than I had ever seen. "Look at them, Clara," he said, an endearing tremor in his voice as he gestured towards the customers. "They're back. It feels like old times again, doesn't it?" I nodded, overtaken by a wave of gratitude. "You have made me proud, my child. You stood for our family when I could not," he whispered, his emotions thickening the air around us. Those words were a balm to my soul, resonating with truth. In that moment, I understood that we had reclaimed not just our business, but our honor as well, reconnecting with the very essence of what our family was built upon. Life in Riverside Springs began to feel vibrant once again, and the community, once tangled in fear, thrived on our victory over darkness. The warmth of my father's embrace enveloped me, drawing me into a cocoon of hope and love. It was as if every push toward victory galvanized our bond, redefining our strength as intertwined and inseparable. As Jack's notoriety faded like a candle flickering out, I realized he had tried to snuff out our spirit, but instead he had illuminated our fight. Together, we emerged united, reinforced by conviction and hope, witnessing our transformation through the experience. My father, a true hero in my eyes, stood tall beside me, ready to face whatever life dared to throw our way. Perhaps our battle had begun as a fight for vengeance, yet it had blossomed into something far more significant. It was a testament to every quiet hero willing to rise against adversity. This was not just about us anymore. It was about every voice yearning to be heard, every heart seeking justice. And as I glanced around the shop, filled to the brim with laughter, chatter, and the reassuring hum of community, I felt proud of what we had achieved and the legacy we had begun. We were no longer simply victims. We had crafted a narrative of resilience, a graceful dance of love and hope amid the clamor of life. I carried this truth with me as we faced the changes ahead. Though adversity could wound us, it would never break our spirit. We would remain bonded by a love that flickered brilliantly in the darkest of times, a light that would guide us forward. That moment, as the sun dipped below the horizon outside the shop, casting hues of gold and orange through the windows, I knew our revenge had been sweetened by the kindness of our community. In our fight against oppression, we had unearthed a deeper purpose, one that transcended the need for revenge and spiraled into the essence of who we were. Together, hand in hand, we would chart our future and redefine our family legacy, emerging forever transformed, standing tall on the ground we had fought to reclaim.